Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mack's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. If life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.sheilamac.com today.
Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio, Mondays at 1 and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila. Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio, Mondays at 1 and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today we have a very special guest. We have Timmy Bauer. He is the author and illustrator of many children's books, including Lucas the Dinosaur Entrepreneur, Billy the Dragon, and Harper Hears No, and a whole bunch more. He is the founder of Dinosaur House, a company that makes kids' books for entrepreneurs. He also hosts a variety of podcasts such as The Literacy Advocate, B2B Growth, The Purpose-Driven Entrepreneur, Writing Better, and the Up-and-Coming Illustrator. Timmy's contributing writer-artist for the Children's Writers Guild magazine. While the kids' books author career was taking off, Timmy was also a Disney actor. I love it.
Man, you're reading the whole thing.
Yes, I am. And Timmy's dream is to make books that ignite a love for reading in kids while inspiring them to think about grown-up topics like entrepreneurship, finance, and personal values. Outstanding. Well, welcome to the show, Timmy.
Thank you so much for having me, Sheila. I'm excited to talk to you.
Now, this show actually started off when I was interviewed by someone else on this network, and that was about my best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And this last 12 months, globally, we have had every situation show up. And so I like to have, maybe if you could share to the listeners a time in your business or personal life where you hit a tough situation and how you got back on track.
Sure. Okay. So I have two that jump out, and I'll just share both of them, and you can tell me which one you find more interesting or which one you'd rather talk about. But two things that have happened. So 2019, I was touring as a kids book author. I've been touring I decided I wanted to be a kids book author professionally a long time ago. Went out and finally just started in 2014 and have been busting my butt to try to get to a place where I can fully support myself on money that I'm making as a kids book author. It's taken a lot of work. I finally got there in 2019 when I realized, oh, wait a second. If I'm just always traveling and am visiting elementary schools literally every day, I can make a full-time living as a kids book author. So that's what I was doing. I was just making trips all over the US, visiting elementary schools, and I'd have a whole routine that I put together to get parents to notice me and to take an interest and see if they want to buy my books. And it was going really well. I quit my jobs and I was like, yes, this is working. I was so excited. And then surprise, surprise. I mean, COVID hits, and so early 2020, I was on tour, and I was like, that's when we were all kind of like, it was over in China, and we're like, what's going to happen? Is it coming to the US? And nobody really knows for sure. And one of the first groups to react were like schools when it came to guest visitors. All of a sudden, every school is like, no more guest visitors. And so they're just, my tour just gets wiped off the table. And I have to go home with no way of making money. Well, I mean, I went back to my old job and just begged if they could take me back. But yeah, so I spent all of 2020 working at my old job, which I was a writer for a media company, and working on trying to crack the question of like, how can I make money as a kids book author again? Because that's what I love. So that's one. Okay, that's one in the professional life. And then another one that kind of is both the professional life and the personal life is in early 2019. My wife left me. I was married for 6 years. My wife went and took a job on Disney Cruise Line, and a couple months later told me that she didn't want to be married to me anymore. And that was a huge shock for me, because man, it's going to be hard to talk about, but if you want to talk about it, I'm a pretty transparent person.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a huge hit. I had no idea that she was so miserable. I mean, I knew that we had problems, but I had no idea that she was as miserable as she was. And I just, to me, the thought of divorce was next to the thought of death. It was like, yeah, this is one way that my life could end, and then this is the other way that my life could end.
Yes. And there's so many people that have gone through a divorce or had a relationship situation that hit them really hard. And when you go through something like that, it affects every single other area of your life. It's not just your relationship. It affects, because you have common friends, it affects your finances. It affects every single thing. I have a whole chapter on that in my book, and then special gifts for people that are going through that, and free courses and things, because it is such a tough journey. And sometimes, for whatever reason, one person or the other isn't aligned. It's really not a representation of you or that other person. It just is what it is. And when you get to the point where you're able to know that something better will show up that's more aligned for you, that's okay. But it takes a while. How long did it take you to rebuild after going through that process?
Yeah. So it was an interesting time, because from 2014 to 2018, I'm just busting my butt trying to figure out how to make being a kids book author a full-time thing. I'm working for Disney as a performer all through this time. And I just keep hitting these like little wins where it's like, oh, I went and I toured this area, and oh, if I line up my tour dates with their book fairs, I make more money that way. And just like just discovering hacks, that worked. But then in 2019, she had left. And at first it was just, she was leaving to go take a job that would have had her traveling, and we would have seen each other, weekly, but just a couple of days a week. but all that time away, I fill the time with traveling, and all of a sudden I get discovered by a little network of schools in Miami, and they just start telling all their principals about all the principals in that network about me, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So and right around that same time is when she told me that she didn't want to be married to me anymore. So I am simultaneously experiencing this soaring off of my entrepreneurial self into success, while personally I feel like I am shattered. And it was just a weird time, because I'm literally like going into elementary schools to perform and read for the kids and, do all the stuff that I do at the schools. And then as soon as I come away from that, I'm basically a crying, shattered mess.
Wow. And
Yeah.
that
It was a dark time.
sounds to me like that was your therapy. That was a lot of us are guilty. I know I was too, of work therapy, or where you can put all your efforts and energy into something where you don't have to think about what else is going on.
Yeah.
And you don't have to grieve over whatever. You can just focus on the good and helping others. And that's beautiful. And then you have your time to heal when you're not doing that. And it's like, it gives you little breaks from the healing process.
Yeah. I would say for me, it was more a distraction than it was therapy. But one thing that was nice is that all the touring was constantly putting me in different locations.
Yeah.
And there was one tour that I did where I toured Arkansas, and I just made a point that after every school visit, I would go off into nature and just pray. And oh my gosh, I spent so many days climbing mountains and crying and talking to God.
Nice. Yes. And that, we all need that in our life, and that's okay. I think that for those listening in, if you have gone through a tough situation or are currently going through a tough situation, let that be okay. That time and space, sometimes going in nature or finding whatever that is for you, whether it's yoga, nature, singing, whatever, and have that time to process, to heal, and also to think about your next steps. Because a lot of times when we're in a place of hurt, or we want to be distracted, we may overspend, or we may make decisions that are based on our emotions versus based on the decisions that we really need to make that make sense. So
I would say I made a lot of decisions based on emotions.
Yes.
In 2019, I was making a lot of money and being broke the whole time.
Yes, that happens. And it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire. This happens to anybody going through a situation like that. It's the same story.
Yeah.
It is. It's a universal thing.
and I would say I would put a caveat around making a lot of money. I guess what I mean by that is it was becoming the most well-paid job that I've ever had. But so this may surprise some folks. Disney does not pay very well its performers. So please don't think that I was making a lot of money. But it was becoming the most well-paid job that I'd ever had. And I was able to like eat more than ramen and eggs, which is what I'd mostly been surviving on.
Yes.
But also have money for plenty of bad decisions.
Right.
I drank a lot of alcohol in 2019. There's this Bible verse. I'm a Christian, by the way, so you're probably going to hear this in the conversation quite a bit. But I was going through just a crazy up and down emotions and spirituality and everything. There's this Bible verse, and I would offend my Christian friends whenever I would share it, but it says, give wine to the one who is sorrowing and strong drink to the one who feels ready to die. And I would say, hey, I'm just applying the Bible to my life right now.
Good use of it. Now that can be applied to anything. And when you think about any religious studies, we can apply it to our own, what serves us but I know that you knew inside and your friends knew, and you have a knowing that it's like, okay, but yeah, really. And it is really not the case, but
Yeah.
it,
I
yeah.
knew it needed. I knew that I knew that plenty of the decisions that I was making weren't healthy, but I was in such a place emotionally. I don't know too much about your personal life, Sheila, and I can't wait to dig into it with you on the purpose-driven entrepreneur. But I would assume that you've gone through some serious pain in your life if this is the show that you've decided to make. And
Mhm.
you can probably remember there's no well, I don't want to assume what it was like for you, but what it was like for me was there was no room for making wise decisions.
Yeah.
There was room for surviving
Mhm.
and just trying to address the pain, and then sometimes just trying to feel the pain, because there was a good while where I just felt like I was going numb.
Very, very normal and very much a part of that process, the grieving process. Very much so. And the reason I wrote the book and the reason I have this show is to help people when they're going through those points in life, whether it's divorce, loss of a loved one, dealing with a career switch or shift like we've all had this last year, whatever it is, reinventing yourself, where you have to walk uh, down a different road and go through this process alone. And I don't want people to feel alone, and that there are so many ways to get back on track. So, like, I created this method that I use to get myself back on track when my house burned down in
Oh, geez.
2017, the Ventura fires, and I had just finished traveling for 7 years straight, had a great time, and did a whole bunch of personal development fun, and worked on the road doing events, and then lost my house, my cat, and my car all in a few days with the
Wow.
fires. And it was, what do I do? And what I did to get back on track was I sat down and I wrote out the formula of what I always do. And it was kind of what I would want to tell my best friend going through something.
Oh man, that yeah.
Mhm.
That reminds me of something that I heard when I was going through this, which was and I never heard. I think I probably heard it before, but I had never done it before.
Mhm.
And there's this podcast that I was listening to where the guys are at one point they were talking about an exercise that you can go through if you have a lot of self-doubt, or if you just think very low of yourself.
Uh-huh.
And it's, you look in the mirror and you talk to yourself like you're not you. Like, you talk to yourself like you're your friend.
Yeah.
And so you don't use I language, you use you language. Like,
Yes.
I literally look at myself. It sounds so weird. And for me, it was just the strangest thing in the world to start with. But I would look at myself in the mirror and I would just be like, okay, Timmy, and then I would just start talking.
Nice.
And at first it felt so weird, but it was surprisingly healing.
Wow, listeners, that is a beautiful application. If for yourself or someone going through something, to go to the mirror and love yourself and look at yourself as if you are your best friend or your closest sister, parent, whatever, and start giving yourself the advice you need to hear and the love in a beautiful way. I think a lot of times we have a lot of negative self-talk that
Yes.
happens, that may be a voice from maybe a parent or a teacher or something from the past, that hopefully your amazing books erase that or stop that in their tracks, so that we don't continue that pattern. But it does tend to happen, and you hear these other voices, and it's like, well, that's not I would never speak that way to my best friend. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm working on a kid's book right now called a kid's book about, or it's called A Picture Book About Rejection. And
Mm,
it's inspired by my experience. And it's literally meant to try to get across to a kid the things that I needed to tell myself when I was going through this. And also the exercise of looking at yourself in the mirror. And I say in the book, I'm like, I know this sounds super weird. It was really weird when I did it.
that is so beautiful. And now, do you have children?
No, 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 no. And I actually don't know that I ever plan on having kids. But for whatever reason, ever since I was a kid, I knew that I wanted to be a kid's book author.
Wow. Yes, because I can just totally feel how good you are with kids, and looking at some of the books that you wrote. I have 6 children. They're all grown. I adopted 3 are mine. They're all mine, right?
Yeah.
And those books are exactly what's needed and what I would want my children to read.
What
Those
made you decide to adopt?
That's a good question. So for me, I was in a very abusive situation growing up, and my mother told me to leave home because it was so dangerous, so much, broken bones and terrible things. So I left. They went from home to home, different relatives my mother was staying with. And so I left, and I was homeless from 10 to 13 and a half. Then I found foster care. I emancipated at 15. I became a mentor. I ran gift stores that created training programs for kids in foster care. And when I had my first child, I was told I couldn't have any more. And so I wanted more. And so then I did foster to adopt and had 3.
That's
Then,
awesome.
how interesting these things, this was a soul contract, a guided, God guided thing, perhaps, that then I had my last 2 birth children that were supposed to be impossible. so and so that happened, and it's something that's always been in my heart to do. My daughter actually is a social worker with a girls' home now that helps young teenage girls that have babies already, and she's their counselor, and she's only in her early 20s. And so it's something that in our family is just part of what we do to give back, and it's
Yeah.
really important to us.
I love it. I don't know if I will adopt, but I have said before when people have asked me if I plan on having kids, I'm like, well, there's already a lot of kids in the world.
Mhm.
I don't know that I really need to add any more. And for whatever reason, it's offensive to people, but to me, it just seems kind of logical.
Yes. And it's funny because I have like all these kids that I have. They're so diverse and different, a little rainbow of children that I have. And they're a lot of them are kind of leaning toward that. And I say whatever form that takes in your life, whether you are adopting, fostering, just through your books, helping with other children, it's whatever comes to you that's right will be right. And it
Yeah.
will be perfect, and it will show up in perfect time. It may change. And whatever it is, like I say, I haven't had any grandchildren, they're all grown. I'm like, hey, what's up? But it's okay. However they show up, it's all good. And if they don't, that's okay, because there's so many to help and be involved with on this planet. And it really is. Those children that I fostered to adopt are the same as my children.
Yeah.
I really believe it was a guided situation. It was something that was in the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, again, as a Christian, that I just believe that that's the heart of God, that his heart is for adoption. So
Mhm.
whatever I do with my life, whether I adopt myself or I just do something to impact the kids that are in the world right now that don't have parents, I just believe there's not really a higher mission that somebody could devote their life to.
Yes. Now, do you have any books in the works or ways that you're helping children as far as dealing with crazy COVID?
I thought about it. I actually submitted one to an agent, and she said that the thing about COVID is it's evolving so fast that a publisher is not super likely to pick up a book that addresses it in the way that it is right now.
Mm,
So I guess it would have to, yeah, that's the thing about COVID. But I mean, there's nothing really stopping me from doing it except that I have a bunch of other books in the works, but I did tentatively write one out that was just like, why do we have to stay home all the time?
yeah.
I thought that'd be a good title for a book because it's probably how kids are feeling,
Mhm.
depending on where you are. But I wrote it when it was pretty serious quarantine. I'm not sure where you're located, Sheila. I'm in Florida, where we basically treat the disease like it doesn't exist.
Right, right. Yes, and I know I have a couple of homes. So one's in California, which is very strict, and the other is in Las Vegas, which is less strict. But the schools are mostly still closed unless some private schools are allowed to be open. It's kind of weird. So there are a lot of children that don't get a lot of outside. You don't get to go out and play. You don't get to do much.
Yeah.
And I think it's really strict when I go home to California. It's ridiculous. it is so strict, and
Yeah.
it's hard on the kids. It's hard
Yes.
on everyone.
Yes.
The children feel this. They feel it. And I feel that as parents, adults, people in children's lives, that the energy we bring, how we show up, just think about if you're on a plane and the stewardess looks scared, you're going to be scared.
Yeah.
Even if you're an adult. This is just
Yeah.
the truth, right? So
Yeah.
I think the same thing, we need to really show up in strength, in agreement. If you're, partners, married, what co-parenting, however you're doing that, maybe you have relatives that agree differently, have an agreement, a discussion about what gets talked about around the kids or how things are presented, so you're on a common ground, so the
Yeah.
children stay grounded and they feel safe. They can have peace. And I think learning is so much easier for kids when they feel safe.
Hmm.
And there's some kind of, even if we don't love routines, there's some kind of a structure of knowing there's a boundary and things are going to be okay. And
Yeah.
yes, I think it makes a big difference.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's affected so many families differently. So you've got families that are now stuck together that are realizing how wonderful it is to spend so much time together. And then you got families that are now stuck together that are uncovering all the problems that they're having with each other.
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, I haven't really had too much of that. The people that I've been stuck with for most of this have been people that I've loved hanging out with. But it's got to be really hard if you are stuck with people that you wish you didn't have to be so stuck with.
Exactly. One of the things I like to share on my show is about 211. Have you heard of the 211?
No.
Okay, so this is really important, and this isn't a sponsored thing, but this is something I always share, and that's 211 is available in every state in the United States and every province in Canada. And if you dial it or Google it, you will find a list of help and resources, whether that's getting food on the table, helping to get a job, help for veterans, seniors, help with childcare, lots of mental health help. And you talk about living, what brought that to mind was when you talk about living in a home that maybe isn't safe, or where a situation isn't right, or somebody is dealing with an addiction, or there's an abusive situation going on. That's where you can get free help in any state or province in Canada or state in the United States. And I just feel really guided to share that, because that's something, just to post that in your work groups. If you run Zooms, share it at work. If you actually go to a physical job again, or with other parents, this is important. A lot of times people are afraid to ask for help when they need it. They won't admit it maybe to their friends. They want to save face, but maybe they really need the help this year. And that's okay. So if you do need help, ask for help when you need it, or share that with someone that comes to you. Maybe you can't help them, but just giving them that information could make all the difference this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people need community, and it's really hard to have community when there's a global pandemic,
Right.
but we need it to handle difficult problems. I mean, for me personally, when I was going through the divorce, I needed to be able to break down and cry in front of people. If I didn't have that, I don't know that I would be okay now.
Right. Yes. Now that brings us back to church, and whatever religion you are, if you're listening in or not, that's okay. But there's something about community, whether it's a church or whatever you belong to, that a lot of our communities are closed down right now. Churches, do you have churches open in Florida?
Yeah, we have churches open in Florida, and they all have different. I don't know what the current restrictions are. There's a lot of churches that are closed, and there's a few that are open, and they're open with restrictions. We've been mostly doing church at our house, but if I wasn't in a house full of people that wanted to do church at the house, I'd personally, I'd be like, okay, well, COVID aside, I need community.
Yes, and a lot of different places. I had favorite, I actually owned a church, so I have a lot going on in my life, but I also have favorite yoga studios and favorite other people's, places of worship that we would all go together in California, because it's very diverse there, and they're closed down for good because of the economy. And so it's really hard because when you think about going through grieving, going through a divorce, anything you're going through, the healing process is in those steps, those traditions, the faith traditions of your family, of your friends, having them close together. It really helps. Now, for my family and I, we lost my youngest son. He was 22 and he had a heart condition called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. He passed away December 21st, 2019.
Oh, wow.
That was like, whew, COVID's nothing. That for our family, that was the hardest thing in our lives. And going through that, our having a community and a place to pray and having people around us, surrounding us to hold us through that time, and even people sending prayers and intentions and blessings and all that, I really believe that we felt it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we felt it. And it was like when we couldn't walk, it carried us through. And
Yep.
I believe that. And now maybe you don't believe in anything and you're listening in, and this isn't a religious show, but
It can be.
scientifically now they have studies that show, my gosh, they put intention on water or different things across, and you'll see that the structure changes. The molecular structure of water will change when you put peace and love and different things across. And there's all these scientific studies on prayer and meditation and how these things work for people and help. So we need that more than ever in this time where we have so much that's uncertain.
Yeah. For me personally, I just found, I was touring in Arkansas, and a friend of mine, she just started taking me to different churches on Sundays because I spent 5 weeks there. And so this was at a point where my heart was pretty numb. I just couldn't really feel I was starting to get to a place where I couldn't feel anything. So I had been drinking a lot. The reason I started drinking so much was to help me just open up, because you drink enough alcohol and it's just going to come out of you, all your feelings. And so that's what I was doing at first. And then I was at a point where I was drinking so much and still going numb. And then I started doing other stuff. I was like, I would go to the gym and I would go, I'm going to work out until I can't move anymore. Just literally trying to hurt myself, so that I would be in pain, so that I would feel the sensation of feeling things. This sounds so, I don't know. I think because I'm a 3, I like hear myself talking right now and I'm like, you sound like a whiny little, and we're on the air, so I can't finish that sentence.
But you're so spot on, because everybody has, like, I would say 99.9% of the people I've worked with, and even myself going through my own divorce at one point years ago. Yeah. I might have done different things. I didn't really drink, but
I'm not advocating for alcohol, except I kind of, in a joking way, am pointing to the fact that it was part of the story. It was part of the story. But what was so crazy, where I was going with this is, so I'm in church, I would pray, there'd be, people worshiping around me, and then I would just break down and start crying. And I would start crying, and then I would start sobbing. And I would just be like bent over and sobbing, and I'm going to get emotional thinking about it now. And the reason that it was so emotional for me is because when someone divorces you, they're not just saying like, hey, you know what? I think we should go separate ways. Like, there might be some divorces that go that way, but not this one. It was, I don't want you anymore, kind of thing. And just the feeling of not being wanted and not being enough and not feeling like you're worthy of anything. Not feeling like someone, will someone ever want me again? This sounds so petty to say, but in that moment, I did. I don't just want to bash her. That my goal is not to get on here and bash her. But in a very low place, feeling unworthy and not I remember thinking like I just wasn't made right. I just wasn't made the right way because I wasn't made to be wanted. Like whatever makes a person wanted, I wasn't put together that way. And just in church, worship going on all around me. I'm crying and I'm just hearing the Lord saying to me, I like the way that I made you. And I would just break down sobbing.
Yeah.
And what's cool is when you're in a church and you break down sobbing, everybody just puts their hands on you.
Right.
So they don't think that you're a weirdo.
Right. And, you know, in society, we kind of tend to like have these crazy rules that it's not okay to have our emotions. Or, I mean, after losing my son, my daughter was like, gosh, my friends were upset with me. And because I was still grieving a month later. And it's like, hello, well, that's just normal. And they haven't had that experience. You know, her younger friends didn't lose a loved one so close. So they don't have something to really.
People were getting on your case for grieving a month later.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what?
A literal month?
Literally. And it changed. It was like, oh, wow, wait a minute. And it made her reassess her friendship circles a little bit and realize some friends are, you know, friends you work with that maybe go have fun with, but they're not really aligned on the value. And it was probably such a good thing to happen at a young age versus later, but that will happen. And so when you find your peer group and your friends and you're in a church or wherever you're at and you find people that support you, and that means that they give you tough love sometimes when they need to just, you know, hold you and put their hands on you, that's one thing, but they'll also say, okay, now I'm going to help you out. Or when they see you're going, okay, wrong road, you're drinking, that's not cute, stop that. You know, they'll tell you that too, and they'll correct you because they care about you. Those are the peer groups and the friends that are just the best for rebuilding. And we all have to rebuild sometimes in our life. Sometimes we have to rebuild a few times. And, you know, like, don't tell me that. but it's true. And we learn each time. And there's a point and a place where you realize, oh my gosh, that person may not be aligned, but that's okay. You know, it was for the time. And there's somebody that's so much more aligned for your future. That's just exactly, there's something about core values, life purpose, and vision. And a certain time in life, you know, you fall in love, you get married, and maybe those things don't align. And if they don't, I never say anything about my children's father. Things were not aligned. and you know, he broke every rule in the book, but you know, and it was like, okay, that's okay. And I have no hate, anger, animosity, nothing. But I also know that, my gosh, it's so much better to love somebody enough to say, hey, you know what? I want you to be aligned with whatever works for you. And for myself, for my children, for my family, I need to be aligned with what works for me. And then even on the core values, and if you go to your religion, you want somebody that's really aligned in that as well.
Yeah. I would say the thought of wanting, it's like logically I can go, yes, I want good for her. But emotionally I'm not there.
Yeah.
I wish that were not true. And God help me, please, Lord, seriously. Because I'm not there yet.
Yeah. And it takes time. It takes time. And here's the interesting thing. This is what I found. There was a point for me where it was like, okay, the only person that needs to heal is me. I'm only responsible for my piece in anything.
Yep.
And that other person, you send them love, you wish them well. Maybe there was something not aligned. For my situation, there was some mental health things going on that weren't quite right. And it's like, okay, if that person was really whole and healthy, they would want the best for the mother of their children. They would want the best. And they would say, you need to not be around, this isn't healthy.
Yeah.
I went with that. You know who you are. You know your strengths, you know what you need to work on. And when you heal and you're yourself and you're doing self-love and you're really whole, this is crazy. You start attracting people that are aligned. You start being attracted to only people, because when you first get divorced, you start like finding the same person in a different package. And you're like, wait a minute, that's just like that other person I just left, or, you know, whatever. And it's the same mess because you're still resolving that. Once you really solve it, it's like, oh, there you are. And this is the wild part. You could have that perfect, that one, that aligned one, whatever, that real person that's going to be a solid relationship forever, for the rest of your life, whatever, could be standing right in front of you. But if you haven't done that little bit of work that's still left, you will not see her.
Yeah.
You will miss
Yeah.
it.
The thought that I would do the self-work and the healing and rise to be the person that God wants me to be. And in living into that, I'm in a healthy place. I'm attracting healthy people.
Yes.
I think that it wouldn't be too hard for me to look over and be like, you know, I want this for you too.
Mhm, mhm. And the closer you get
It's
to,
not going to be with me,
yes,
but
exactly. And the more you go down that healthy road, the healthier that thought is. It's like, okay, you know, it can be neutral. It doesn't have to be like, I want you to win the lottery and I want all blessings to fall upon you and good luck. but it's just like a neutral, like, okay, it's done.
yeah,
It's finished. Send it blessings, send it love, you know, whatever, and you move on. And when
yeah,
you're ready, then that's when everybody shows up. And you start talking to people that are like, oh, that's not the same person. This is right. And it's easy. It's not difficult. It's not forced. It's not hard. You're not pretending to be something to please them. None of that.
Did you have a hard time forgiving your ex?
It took a couple of years because he didn't want to get divorced. So for many years, he refused to sign the papers. And that was difficult because I was stuck in that. If I was Catholic, it was, you would call it purgatory. It was that in between hell where you're not in one and you're not in the other. And I, you know, couldn't really date anyone because I wasn't officially divorced and it didn't feel right. And, you know, so it was that was when I was very angry. So I was like, we need to just move on. And then once we got to that point, it was like peace.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the person that I'm with now, we met and I was still officially married. We were like in the process of going through the documents with the lawyer. And I just was like, I had a conversation with her. I was like, you know, the right thing to do is probably for you and I to not be together and let me resolve this first. I don't want to do that. I don't because because honestly, I'm just gonna go, yeah, I want to get this paperwork done so I can get back to you. I was like, what do you want? And she was like, well, I definitely don't want to break up with you so that you can button up your paperwork.
Right.
But I'm in a much happier relationship now. I feel like this conversation's been all over the place, Sheila. I want to go conversationally wherever you want to go. But yeah, I'm in a much happier and healthier place now. It was a solid year of, I think, God just kind of, on one hand, letting me go crazy, and then on the other hand, just constantly reminding me about the person that He made me to be and wants me to be.
And I wonder how this universal pause, pandemic, whatever, corona, that is nice when it's just a beer. And I don't even drink beer, but I would love it to be a beer again. I might even like partake in a beer if that's all it was again. But with that, do you think it's changed our relationships or the goals of people in relationships because of the need to, you know, you can't go dating. You can't, it's a little more difficult to do things nowadays.
Yeah.
On that.
Well, that's an interesting question because, I mean, I was dating during COVID. Well, hold on. Let me think about this. I'm trying to like get the timeline straight. No, I was dating just before COVID. Yeah. So I might not have much to say. I mean, we were dating and quarantined away from each other, and that was a little weird. But yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. What I do have a few pieces of advice that I could give, though, as somebody that kind of sucks at relationships in general. I've taken the Strengths Finders test, and there's some things that I score high in. I've got a pretty strategic mind. I'm a pretty winsome communicator. I feel like I've been talking all over myself on this podcast, so I don't know how much that's coming through. But I always thought that I was good at relationships because of the whole like winsome communicator thing. Like I can walk into a setting, not know anybody, and come out with friends. But that's not the same thing as relationship building. And I've never known that until I took the Strengths Finder test and really started reading about it. Relationship building is way more intentional than that. I'm great at like throw me in a situation and I'll come out having met people that would love to hang out with me, but that's not the same thing as like building a relationship with those people. But something that has helped for me personally is having a podcast. This is going to sound so practical and weird, but I would say if you're lonely, I didn't think the show would go here, but honestly, if you're lonely, start a podcast about the stuff that you'd like to be talking about and just start having a bunch of conversations with people about it.
Yes.
It's pretty easy to start a podcast. You just go on Anchor. I'm not sponsored, but just like go to anchor.fm.
So true. It is so true. I mean, I started with a podcast and went to the radio show as well. It also goes on all the podcast channels. And I love talking with people from all over the world, having incredible conversations and sharing tips on how other people out there can get back on track. Before I go on each show, I really do a prayer and meditation. And I really believe that those listening in need to hear the day's message from whoever showed up on my show as a guest. And so somebody listening in is probably going down the same road you just talked about. Maybe they're writing children's books. Maybe they're a parent. Maybe they're going through a divorce. Maybe it's real. And they needed to hear it from you in your voice. And I believe that's, as long as I'm putting this out there in the universe and it's helping somebody, it feels good.
Yeah. I mean, my advice would be if you are listening to this and you're going through a divorce, I think the one thing that I did that probably changed everything was every day I would just go somewhere. For me, it was the gym. So I'd go to the gym, I'd get on the treadmill. I looked like a crazy person. I'd go to the gym, I'd get on the treadmill, I'd put my hands in the air, and I would just say, God, my life is yours. What in the world do you want me to do? And what am I supposed to do with this? What am I supposed to do with all this crap? And I need you to be here and to talk to me and to give me some idea of what the heck I'm supposed to do, and how I'm supposed to feel. And I would just talk to him like that. And I guarantee you there were people at the gym that thought that I was insane. But I personally, that made all the difference.
Yes. That's beautiful.
But about the podcasting advice, you can tell because you just read, like, I have 5 podcasts. Those are literally just 5 excuses for me to talk about things that I care about. So for 5 areas of my life: literacy, entrepreneurship, marketing, writing, and illustrating, I have started a podcast so that I can talk to experts in those areas and just have real conversations that I can hopefully build actual meaningful relationships off of. And I think it's a really good idea if you're trying to figure out how you're going to handle loneliness right now.
That is really important. And I think that, and my Peloton bike, I don't know what bike you rode, but I have a Peloton, and I'm telling you, that was like a mental save during this pandemic, because I'd get on the ride and you talk to people and you high five each other. And then I would go to it afterwards. I would do another like 30 minutes where you go to a different place in the world, and they have different like scenic routes after the
Yeah.
class. And the scenic routes, I would do a prayer and meditation ride, and I would be like, I'm there, sending it out to all those people in that part of the world. And then I go to a different part of the world, because I'm not like one to stay home. I traveled the world for 7 years straight. So for me to stay home full time, that like helped me feel out and involved in making a difference. And it really does. These prayers and intentions work, and getting out there, connecting with people. You don't know where it's going to lead. And then I'd love for you to share a little bit more about how people can connect with you. Where's the best place to find you, and maybe get those children's books, which are incredible?
Sure, absolutely. I think I'm just gonna pick. Well, you can check me out honestly by just Googling Timmy Bauer. So Bauer is spelled like Jack Bauer. If you just Google my name, you'll see everything. You'll see Instagram and everything. And I'm probably most active on Twitter right now. And it's just my name. So Timmy Bauer. If you want to connect with me, just type in Timmy Bauer, and you can DM me anywhere, and I'll see it. But the one call to action that I just love to send anybody who is interested to would be a newsletter that I started called Monthly Kids Book. So just monthlykidsbook.com. Monthlykidsbook.com. I'm not selling you anything. I mean, you can go buy my books physically if you want to, but that's not the purpose. What it is I literally just once a month will send you to your inbox a copy of one of my kids' books. So I'm at a publishing rate now where I'm producing more than a book a month. So you will get a kids book that you can read with your kids in your inbox for free every month. Monthlykidsbook.com. I don't plan on using that newsletter for anything besides sending you free kids books. So please go to monthlykidsbook.com.
Awesome. All right. All right. Thank you for being a guest on the show. And I look forward to getting all those kid books for my grandchildren.
Yeah.
Right.
Sheila, thanks so much for having me.
All right. Take care then. Thank you. And for those listening in, stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages. All right. If you are just tuning in, this is the Sheila Mack Show on NBC's KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. And today, I'd like to share with you a chapter in my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. So take a listen. You are tuning in to NBC's Sheila Mack Show, and I just wanted to share with you that we are opening our new March group classes. There is one related to divorce recovery support, and we also have one for relationship reboot. So if you were tuning in earlier and heard about Tim's incredible journey back to healing and recovery after divorce, this may have spoken to you. And if you are looking for a support group, go to SheilaMack.com and sign up. We'd love to have you in one of these two courses. And also, I'd like to now share with you a short part of one of the chapters on relationships from my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. Relationships are so important that I did dedicate an entire chapter to this course. And also, once you read the chapter, there is an additional free gift link to get a complete additional ebook just related to the chapter on relationships, with activities and many more free resources. All right, take a listen. Chapter 3: Shift or Get Off the Pot. Relationships. Angela is a friend and client in her late 40s who hit rock bottom while going through a divorce. Angela's artistic talent is a big part of her essence, a way for her to express her emotions, her truth, her love. But Angela's husband didn't like her to talk about her art, let alone create art in the house. He is a very militant and structured man, and she is the creative artist type. When Angela and her husband were dating and newlyweds, they had fun. She felt free to express herself. That sense of freedom withered away after they had children.
Angela's husband expected the household to be run with a certain structure and the children to be raised in a strict way of life. Angela wanted to share her passion for art with her kids, making murals and crafting homemade ornaments for the holidays. Her husband didn't think that was necessary and hated coming home to a messy house, even yelling and putting her down in front of the children if he felt they had gone overboard with the art projects. They fought often over the years. The children loved doing art projects with their mother when they were younger, able to express the artistic parts of themselves. As they got older, however, they saw less of who she really was. Instead, Angela's children saw somebody living in conflict with herself. They saw her get in trouble when she made her art, so they kept their passions and talents locked in a box too. When I asked Angela about her happiest moments, she said it was when she and her children were decorating those ornaments, making gifts for everybody. Even little Sam, who wasn't great at art projects, used his computer programming skills to create his own style of art. They put their heart into their gifts for grandparents, aunts, and uncles. When their father came home, he said, "That's stupid. Just buy them a gift. We've got money." Angela felt like she was holding her breath in every aspect of her life and not expressing her true self. She worked in a professional, non-creative field. Her husband expected a strict, disciplined household. Angela's artistic side was suffocating. Family, friends, even therapists pointed out how restrictive Angela's lifestyle had become. Nobody was happy in that house, not even the dog. For about 10 years, Angela did everything possible to stay in her marriage for her children. She and her husband ended up sleeping in separate rooms and leading separate lives in the same house, prolonging the pain of growing apart. Leaving seemed an obvious choice, but nobody could take that step for Angela. There isn't a human being on the planet who would have helped her walk through that door until she was finally ready, which happened, unfortunately, only after she got very sick and ended up in the hospital. There, Angela realized that if she didn't stop the stress and get away from this continuous torture eating her up inside, she might literally die. Finally, she reached out and was able to say, "I'm ready to do this because I don't have any other choice." Lying in the hospital bed was her rock bottom moment. But that's not to say her situation couldn't get any harder. The circle of people they most related to as a family did not support Angela and her children through the divorce because they came from a very traditional religious background where divorce is not considered an option. Her children were cut off from one set of grandparents. Angela lost friends from her place of worship. I do have Mastermind live weekly courses, and those are available at SheilaMac.com, SheilaMac.com.
I have to let you know something, just between you and me. This book is not one size fits all, just like a pair of boots or a bra. So the formula is designed to help you through any situation.
I'd love for you to grab a copy of my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. It is now available on Audible as well as on Amazon and Kindle and at www.sheilamac.com.